Hey guys, we're gonna talk today about something I get asked about quite a lot is when I shoot double exposures, what that means. And I'm gonna walk you through a little tutorial on my Milky Way processing where I have done just that. I've shot multiple exposures, one for the foreground, one for the sky, and I'm gonna show you today how to process those and maybe clear a little bit of that stuff up for you. Come along. All right, guys, here we are in Lightroom, and I'm going to show you how to just kind of quickly process two images that I took of the Milky Way. And this isn't like I won't get into the whole Milky Way tutorial thing. There's 100 different ways to do it, and I'm sure some of you have different ways. I'll just show you a quick way that I do it. And this will kind of show you how to blend the two images that I took. When I say that I've shot multiple exposures for an image, this is going to show you how I process them up. So this one here is our first image that I took in Monticello. It's got some potato rows that are in full bloom, and they would kind of lead you to the Milky Way and kind of draw you into the image a little bit. So I shot this image at 30 seconds, ISO 6400. I used the Rokinon 14 millimeter f2.8 lens on my D750 Nikon. And how I come up with the 30 seconds, to explain that real quick, you just divide, you take the 500 rule. You take 500, divide it by your focal length, and that will give you how many seconds you can leave the shutter open. So 500 divided by 14 will give you roughly 35 seconds and some change. So I just backed it up to a 30-second exposure. That way you won't get any star trails in your image. That's why you do that. So that's basically as long as I can leave the shutter open for, and that's as much light as I can get in is here. And you can see that the histogram is pushed all the way over to the left of this image. So there's not like a whole lot of data there. There is in the sky, but that's what we're exposing for there, but there isn't in the foreground. And the reason that we take a longer exposure for the foreground is when I try to, I'll show you really quick. If we open up the shadows, and then let's just pull the exposure up a little bit to make it so that you can actually see the potato rows. You see this nasty purple banding and noise that kind of comes in to the image. Nikon's on the bottom, very bottom of the image, are kind of famous for this. It's just you didn't leave the shutter open long enough. And so therefore you kind of think a little bit about when you do this stuff. And sometimes it's really nice just to silhouette the Milky Way against the sky with some trees, silhouette them with it, or a house, a barn, anything like that is really cool. Then you don't have to worry about that. In this case, I wanted the potato rows in it, so I decided I'd shoot two exposures. And when I shoot one for the foreground, you'll see that the sky now, the stars are not sharp anymore. They're long, because in this we went 258 seconds is what I went with at a lower ISO for a little bit cleaner foreground image. At ISO 2000, but you'll see we got a lot more data in the histogram to work with, and where we left that shutter open longer. So if I open the shadows up here, you can see the difference that it makes in that foreground, so that you can see the potato rows pretty nice. And if I turn up the exposure just a little bit here, even quite a ways, you'll see that there isn't any more of that purple noise or purple banding that comes in from not leaving the shutter open long enough. So now you have a lot cleaner foreground image to go along with that pretty night sky image that you took. So when you do this stuff, I'll just kind of show you how I process that and what kind of is involved in producing a photo like that. So what happens? Let's go back and do the night sky one first. And we always go down, and we'll take the sharpening, we'll turn the radius down. The radius, when you sharpen, if the radius is up there big, it'll try to sharpen some of the noise and it adds some artifacts. So I tend to like to turn the radius down on my night sky imaging, and the sharpening is, I usually leave it around 40. And then the masking, you can hold down on Alt, and then when you left click, your mask will show you the white is sharpening, the black it is not. So I kind of turn that up, so it's just maybe sharpening the skies and just that little bit around the trees, you'll see. And then you don't add the artifacts into the image a little bit. It just kind of makes for a cleaner image when you're all said and done. And then the noise reduction, we used ISO 6400. I'll just turn it up in this for the sake of the video to say 30, and that'll pretty much clean up all the noise in the image. The Nikon D750 does work pretty good for night images. So then we'll play around. We'll add a little bit of magenta. I like that little bit of a purpley look. And I do like the blue in the sky. Just a touch. Let's go like that. Without overdoing it, let's add a radial filter here. And we'll kind of position it over the Milky Way. Like that. And let's invert it. So then with the Milky Way here, we can bring out some of the natural colors in it with a little bit of temperature and the tint sliders. And all this stuff is to taste, really. You can kind of do this however you want to make the Milky Way look. We like to make it pop just a little bit, so we'll kind of add a little bit of that, and we'll open up the white some. Like that. We'll call that one done, and let's take the whites in this image and we'll open them up a little bit too, and the whole thing. So now we've got a pretty good little Milky Way. A little bit of contrast. Like I said, this will just be a quick little rundown of what I kind of process here without getting too involved in it and too fussy. So now we've got the Milky Way pretty well edited from a raw photo as the camera saw it, and we added a few little touches to it, just kind of make it pop. So let's go in to our foreground image here, and where we started with this, same way, let's go down. And the sharpening will bring up a little, we'll mask a little bit of it out, turn the radius down, and add just a little bit of noise reduction, say 20 in the bottom. And histogram's got a lot of info in it, which is good. Let's make it just a touch bluer here, maybe just a little bit of magenta, and a little bit of contrast. And we'll turn that vibrance up just a little bit, and the saturation some. So now we have both of our images pretty well set to go for Photoshop. So let's click on both images, go to Photo, edit in, and we're going to go down as Open as Layers in Photoshop. That will stack both images one on top of the other so that we can just create a mask, and I'll show you how to blend those two together as soon as that opens in Photoshop. All right, here is both of our images in Photoshop. We've got the night sky. Let's go Control 0, make it fit the screen, and here's your foreground image, and here is the Milky Way image. So I stacked the brighter one on top, and over here you'll see the layers panel. So the brightest one is on top, the darker one is on the bottom for our sky. And what I'll do is we're just gonna make a simple mask. We're gonna put a white mask on it. That will hide everything. And then what we're gonna do is switch the color here to black, and we're gonna click on our gradient filter. So with the gradient filter, we should be able to hold on shift to keep it straight, and then just kind of drag that down into the photo. And then this should blend both images fairly well together. And what we'll do is do it like that right there for now. We'll take our brush tool, click on white, and we'll just kind of use that tree line as the break in our image. And then we'll come down here, and we'll put a harder edge on the brush. And then we'll just kind of come right along that image like this. And this right here will bring that tree line in. and kind of split it right on the potato rose. And we were not going to get really technical here with the editing and get into luminosity masking and all of that. Let's go back to a softer brush. And now we're going to go white. We're going to add some of this back in. And we're just kind of going to paint this back in this way. And then as you can see now, we're going to have a nice something like that. And now as you can see with our mask, we have blended our foreground image in with our sky image. So that is basically what I do. And then when I'm done here, we can stamp that. And if we want to put a little bit of a vignette on, I can show you how I do that to kind of draw you into the center. I'll pull that in there and we'll use the brush tool and we'll just paint this out of with a soft brush. We'll kind of paint it out of the center at 100% opacity. We'll just take and paint our curves layer out like this. And then I'll Control J and duplicate that layer. And on that second one, we're going to invert it. So now we have, and we're going to pull that back up that way right there. So then what we'll do to check it out, select them both, Control and G to group them. So here's our vignette before and after. Kind of draws you in closer into that Milky Way and makes you look kind of more at the center of the image. And if we think that's just a little bit too much, you can back it down the opacity on that layer to like 50%. And there it is. And then we'll click on layer here and flatten the image. So now we've taken both of our Milky Way shots, one a 30-second one for the sky and the other one a 4-minute, roughly speaking, for the foreground, and we've blended both of those together really simple in Photoshop with just a, okay guys, and there you have it. That's how I basically blend double exposure in of the night sky when I'm out, if I choose to shoot a longer exposure for the foreground. I hope that kind of sheds a little bit of light on, how to shoot the night sky. Use the 500 rule, 500 divided by your focal length. That'll tell you how long you can leave your shutter open without getting star trails. And then the rest of it is just kind of creative. If you want to, show some of your foreground and have that featured in your photo, you could take a long exposure. That's kind of a quick blend on how I do it with just a gradient filter. Sometimes some of them are a little bit harder where you have to use a luminosity mask. Maybe another time we'll get into that. But this one here was fairly straightforward, pretty simple, and I thought I would just kind of share that with you. How to blend the two images together when I shoot a night sky image. Now you can kind of see a little bit of the behind the scenes process of making a photo for you guys when I do it. So I hope that sheds a little bit of light, and I hope you like it. We'll catch you in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.